Hello, I'm Chip Pickering, the CEO of INCOMPAS. And today we kick off with our first keynote in the Connect In first all-time virtual conference for INCOMPAS. We have two great speakers, one from the public policy and legislative perspective, and the second from industry and technology in their perspective, as we look at the lessons we're learning in pandemic and the future as we come out of it. So I couldn't be more thrilled to have two great leaders talking to all of our audience as we start the INCOMPAS Connect In conference. So with that having been said, let me first introduce Senator Roger Wicker, my home state senator from Pontotoc, Mississippi. He is the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Chairman. He is a leading senior member of the Armed Services Committee. He also is on the Rules Committee and on the Environment and Public Works Committee. He started a long public service career as in the Senate of Mississippi, served in the House from 1994 to 2007, and then he went to the U.S. Senate. He was active duty Air Force, retired in 2004. He and his wife, Gail, have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. And so I couldn't be happier to work with Senator Wicker on our home state and in the policy that's important to the rest of the nation. And today to have him as our keynote. And with that, Roger, I'm going to let you kick things off, and we look forward to hearing from you. And then we'll ask a few questions of you and Michael once we finish.
Okay, well, Chip, thank you very much. We've been friends for years and years, colleagues, and you've been a great advisor. You've got a great dad. You've got great kids. So I've known at least 3 generations and appreciated 3 generations of Pickerings, and so glad to be with someone as knowledgeable and successful as Michael Dell today. So thank you very much. And thanks to the innovators and entrepreneurs who are participating virtually. Innovation has been at the heart of the American spirit, but this year we have really had to learn how to innovate to sustain our daily life. When schools and businesses were forced to shut their doors this year, technology became a critical lifeline, and I guess we're going to talk about that today. Classrooms went online. I'm not so sure about that. I'd rather we have teaching in person, but we had to do it online for a while. At least hospitals made use of telehealth, and I want to expand that, and certainly we want to do that even before the pandemic occurred. Businesses quickly became accustomed to events like this one by Zoom, Teams, or WebEx, or whoever I'm leaving out that'll be offended because I didn't name them. Technology has made us more agile and resilient in responding to this virus. And so we owe a debt of gratitude to the enterprising men and women who pushed the tech industry forward, like some of the people that are on this call today. Government has played a critical role in responding to the pandemic. For the first time in our history, state and local leaders made a collective decision to shut down this economy, to shut down a roaring economy voluntarily to protect public health. That led to millions of Americans losing their jobs through no fault of their own. In March, Congress swiftly passed 3 major relief bills. First, relatively modest $8.3 billion package to expand testing and treatments for COVID-19 and send relief to small businesses. 1 week later, again, in a spirit of bipartisanship, we passed legislation providing paid sick leave, free coronavirus testing, expanded unemployment benefits, and food insecurity measures. And then finally, the big $2.2 trillion CARES Act, the largest relief package in American history. And again, virtually unanimous. We joined hands not as Republicans, Democrats, left and right, but as Americans tackling this unprecedented worldwide event. As we record this, I still remain hopeful that Congress and the Trump administration can negotiate a phase 4. I had felt we would probably do that in late July or August. Clearly that didn't happen. And presidential politics are in play, House and Senate politics are involved, but I'm still hopeful that the government will continue to be helpful in rescuing and also recovery. It's more recovery now than rescue. Federal government is continuing to partner with private industry to develop a vaccine and testing, which will, of course, be game changers. The Commerce Committee, which I chair, has worked on several initiatives to aid in this recovery. To help ease the burden on doctors and patients, I authored the Connect for Health Act, which would expand telehealth access for Medicare patients. There's been one iteration of this, and we're trying to expand that and modernize it and make it better. I think telehealth will revolutionize healthcare delivery to this country, and there's no better time to expand it now than now, when millions of patients have to stay home for their own safety and for their own health concerns. The pandemic has made it even more urgent that we close the digital divide in this country. We've made significant strides in this area over the past few years. For instance, between 2016 and 2018, the number of Americans without access to fixed terrestrial broadband services at the 25, 30 megabits per second dropped by 30%. The number of Americans without that dropped. So today, more than 85% of Americans enjoy access to 4G LTE at 250, 25 megabits per second. These are remarkable gains, but there's still about 20 million Americans without access to broadband. This year, Congress took an important step by passing the Broadband Data Act, a law I authored to address the FCC's flawed broadband maps. For years, the FCC's maps have overstated broadband coverage. For example, saying that Mississippi had 98% mobile broadband coverage, an utterly ridiculous claim. The Broadband Data Act will fix the problem by requiring the FCC to change the way broadband data is collected, verified, and reported to the agency. Of course, that requires work and we've got to pay for it. The FCC says it needs $65 million to implement this change. I think that's an accurate estimate, and I'm working with the Appropriations Committee to make sure sufficient funding is provided. I hope it's done during this month of September. More recently, I introduced legislation that would speed up the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, RDOF, incentivizing companies to deploy broadband faster in unserved areas. I've also joined Senator Tim Scott in introducing a bill to support the expansion of broadband in areas surrounding historically Black colleges and universities. These schools are anchors of economic opportunity and broadband access in areas that continue to be underserved, and they are well positioned to expand broadband to their communities. Local efforts have already been pivotal in deploying broadband. In my state of Mississippi, legislators directed CARES Act relief funds to local broadband projects that will help children in rural areas connect to school. And last year, the legislature passed a law facilitating the efforts of electric cooperatives to get involved in deploying fiber to their areas of service. That law is already paying dividends, with many local co-ops choosing to invest in fiber infrastructure on a case-by-case basis. As the committee continues working to close the broadband gaps, we are also planning for the next generation of broadband. 5G promises to usher in a new era of connectivity with the potential to propel our nation into the fourth industrial revolution. In practical terms, 5G could create $500 billion in economic growth and 3 million new jobs. But getting there will require a dedicated and coordinated effort by all levels of government and industry. This initiative starts by making more spectrum available. It also means continuing to modernize our infrastructure to facilitate fast deployment of 5G. And we also face a shortage of workers necessary to deploy 5G. The Labor Department is working closely with the telecommunications industry to provide training and improve technical skills to produce the 5G network America needs. Critically, to succeed in 5G, we need to make sure our networks are secure. The United States government has taken significant steps to limit the Chinese firms Huawei and ZTE from doing business with American companies. Congress has also acted by passing the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act, the RIP and Replace bill. I authored which gives powerful financial incentives for U.S. companies to strip out their Huawei equipment and replace it with secure alternatives. This law will help clear the way for safe and secure deployment of 5G in America. The FCC estimates that this will cost between $1.6 and $1.8 billion at a time when we're spending $2.2 trillion with the CARES Act and perhaps another trillion or so. That's well worth it, and I'm working to secure these funds also this month. America can win the race to 5G if we continue to promote investment, protect consumers, and reward innovation. So I think government is taking the right steps to get there, and I know our innovators are up to the challenge as well. So thank you very much, Chip, for having me be a part of this.
Well, Roger, thank you for your leadership and for our home state and for all of our member companies at INCOMPAS. The quick response and the CARES Act, all the other initiatives that you just outlined make a tremendous difference. And so we're very grateful for your leadership, and we want to continue working with you. And as we listen to the next keynote from Michael Dell, and then we'll ask a few questions as we end. But again, thank you for all that you've done and for the leadership. And now I'm going to introduce Michael Dell, who's the chairman of the board of directors and chief executive officer of Dell Technologies, the company he founded with $1,000 in 1984. Roger at the ripe age of 19. Notably quoted as saying that the technology is about enabling human potential. And Michael's vision of how technology should be designed, manufactured, and sold forever changed the IT industry. In 1992, Michael became the youngest CEO to earn the ranking on the Fortune 500. And I know we all look forward to his perspective from industry and technology and how he sees COVID and the pandemic changing the world in which we live and the trends that will be coming out of it. And I'm very grateful that we have both of you here with us today. And Michael, we look forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Chip. Senator, it's an honor to be with you. And Chip, thank you for gathering such a great online forum to be able to discuss these important topics. As the Senator mentioned, COVID-19 has created a lot of disruption across all aspects of our lives. And it's really highlighted what I see is a critical need for dependable and resilient networks for all aspects of our life, whether we're working from home or we're learning from home or telehealth or just how we connect with our family and friends. And we need to invest now in the next generation telecom network to better prepare us for the future. And broadband connectivity is not really a luxury in a digitally connected economy. Connectivity is economic opportunity. And having an open, interoperable 5G network is going to play an essential role in ensuring that all parts of the United States have access to fast and reliable broadband. And to be the innovation leader in 5G, the United States has to play to our strengths, specifically in semiconductors and software and cloud. And a lot of us in the industry have been talking about the Open RAN initiative. And 5G is really making this disaggregation of the hardware and software possible, and using virtualization technology to bring these technologies back into a place where the US can actually win again in telecom equipment. And the future of our economy, of our communities, and also our security depends on business and government's ability to invest now in the infrastructure for the digital economy. And 5G, as the senator highlighted, is incredibly important. It is the most transformative change in our generation. And it's not about talking on the phone faster, it's about connecting things and about making an intelligent world with enormous amounts of data. It's not a simple evolution of 4G. It's going to require a massive transformation, and it's going to demand new distributed architectures using software-defined networks. And for the US to have a long-term role in the development of 5G technology and standards, we should focus on open innovation over proprietary solutions and leverage our strengths. And Open RAN allows the US innovation and software and interoperable hardware to create a United States-based 5G telecom equipment lead in the world. Right now, VMware is helping Dish build the nation's first cloud-native 5G network on Open RAN technology. And this is really a game changer for US 5G leadership, and shows that open, interoperable, software-defined 5G is not kind of pie in the sky. It's actually here now. The reverse of doing this is a kind of digital inequality, which would be a really bad outcome. And as governments, not just here in the United States, but around the world, look to rebuild their economies, investing in technology infrastructure, specifically 5G, gives all communities an opportunity to close that connectivity gap. Now, one of the other things that is an important enabler here is it's inevitable that more spectrum is going to be needed for 5G as it expands beyond the traditional mobile broadband for consumers and becomes a foundational network for digital everything, right? It's manufacturing, industrial applications, military, government, all types of businesses, large and small, will form their experiences around digital technology. And there's a huge opportunity to unleash 500 megahertz of contiguous spectrum at the 12 gigahertz band for 5G. This band has no federal encumbrances and can dramatically transform America's 5G spectrum resources. And this 12 gigahertz band has already been proven for terrestrial communications in early build-outs of one-way high capacity delivery. And there's no technical reason why it can't be used for two-way services. Enabling these two-way services for 5G requires regulatory approval, and that's what's needed to allow this spectrum to be used and allocated in an efficient way. Industry and the FCC must work together to fully utilize this important spectrum. And the US needs a national strategy to create a larger ecosystem for domestic telecoms industry. And we don't want to make the mistake that was made 20 years ago when this industry was kind of lost. We have an opportunity to bring it back because it's now moving onto the playing field where the U.S. leads. And we also have to make sure that this doesn't happen in those other sectors where we lead today in software and semiconductors and cloud. We need a partnership between government and industry focused on 5G to drive the technological standards, the supply chain, and to address the national economic security issues that, quite frankly, this technology presents an enormous opportunity for us to get it right. So excited to be with you all today. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Chip.
Well, Michael, thank you, and Senator Wicker. I'd like to ask a couple questions, and both of you mentioned and hit on these subjects in your remarks. But I'm going to start with my second question first. In the crisis of Corona and the pandemic, really connectivity, whether it's telemedicine, online, at work, and the goals of reaching broadband to everyone or broadband to all, should that be a national goal? Should it be a national commitment? And if so, how do we in the near term try to bring broadband to all parts of the country and to every person? And Senator Wicker, if you would start, and then Michael, please follow up.
Oh, okay, well, let's start by finding out for certain where the needs are. And that goes back to my Broadband Data Act, which has recently been signed into law, but which I pointed out still needs to be funded. And the FCC, when you talk to them, will point out that it's great to have it, but they do not. They're not able to appropriate the money to get that done. They need $65 million to implement that change. And again, we're working to make sure that we get there soon, lest we proceed with faulty information. So I'd say that's the first thing.
And Michael, your view.
I think it has to be a national priority. I mean, these telco networks of the future are, at least equivalent to the highways, right? That were built, a couple of generations ago. And without those networks and without the U.S. leading with 5G, we're going to have a problem of economic opportunity, and we're going to fall behind relative to other leading nations out there. So it would be a horrible mistake to not do this. I also am of the belief that these new technologies that we've been talking about, like Open RAN, are going to allow for faster deployment, particularly in rural networks, and that's going to it's going to lower the cost. It's going to be easier to run. 5G using mobile broadband, is more cost effective than running fiber, particularly to areas with low population density. And this Open RAN initiative that we're talking about, where we disaggregate the hardware and software, lowers the cost of the equipment for the telcos, which can then, pass that savings along and provide, cost-effective access, everywhere. So, yeah, I think it's incredibly important.
Michael, is there any resistance from certain sectors to this idea, or is there broad consensus?
Well, so if you think about the telco equipment piece of it, it's interesting. Kind of how did we lose control of this important industry? Right, this was a couple of decades ago, but other nations made it a higher priority than we did. that was a big mistake. I think for the big telcos to adopt these architectures, you need at-scale companies like Dell Technologies, quite frankly, that are building these systems, and you need the government to kind of get behind it in terms of there's a number of things that can be done that are already in process. So, for example, encouraging the use of these technologies in government applications. And, your bill around rip and replace will certainly be helpful here as well. Look, I think we need to recognize that there are clear national security concerns in not having American champions that are building the key technologies here. On the spectrum issue, certainly there are other folks out there who would try to use that spectrum. But again, if you look at the available spectrum that could be used for 5G, this 12 gigahertz band is an incredible asset, and it would be a real shame to let it be used for anything other than the 5G networks that we need to build. I mean, the U.S. is, as you know, woefully behind China and 13 other leading nations in 5G spectrum. If this 12 gigahertz band were to be used, it would immediately jump us to the head of the pack. So that would be a great step forward. But there's multiple things that are required to get this 5G, American ecosystem really humming along. But it's got to be a national priority for sure, or else, I worry about the economic implications of losing out in this super important technology.
Well, Michael, if your goal comes to fruition there on this 12 gigahertz band, how much more capacity would we need to win the race to 5G? What percentage of that would that get us?
I think with the work that's been done already in some of the other bands and the recent release of 100 megahertz, working with DoD, if this 12 gigahertz band is brought into 5G, I think we're in pretty good shape. And so it's kind of been assumed that we're out of spectrum, right? There's no spectrum for 5G. We have this horrible problem. But actually, this 12 gigahertz band is kind of sitting there, and now the FCC has to review it and go through their normal process and that sort of thing. But subject to that, I think this puts us on a great path there.
Well, I want to thank both of you, both for your leadership, your investment in 12 gigahertz and the other spectrum bands on broadband connectivity for all, both in the mapping and the other steps that the Senate Commerce Committee under Senator Wicker's leadership has taken. This is a great conversation, and I again thank both of you for joining us today. I look forward to working with both of you as we win the race to 5G and bring broadband to all parts of the country. And again, thank both of you for being our first kickoff keynote as we start our virtual conference on Monday.
Thank you.
Great to be with you. Thank you.